Thanks, Nighthawk. Miss you, buddy. Miss you. I'm Dave. There's no Mecky today because he's stuck in Sydney's CBD, Central Business District, because of a protest march, which has actually, locked him and his family in the car park. You can't escape the car park. He sent me some video footage of it, and well, if he makes it back by the end of the show, we'll talk about it. Otherwise, we'll talk about it on Tuesday morning, Eastern, 7 a.m. during Plato's Cave. Anyway, in the meantime, Shiny Side is coming to you from Australia for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio. That is home to fresh, unfiltered ideas and conversations. And you'll find those in the chat room. It's where I am. Hey, Maced. I'm not going to scroll back in time too far. Maced, Lavender Streams. Hello to everyone. Unshaken. Flippy Troll. Comet. Are all having a great discussion in there. In the chat room. And you can be there too. You can talk to us while we're on air. That's the new thing people can do. We've said this for 12 years. This is the 13th year. Hopefully it doesn't end tomorrow, but that's another story, and I'll talk about it a bit later on. Anywho, this is show number 630, and Mecky would say 0, 30, and 600, I think, something like that. And did you know that there's many ways to listen to Revolution Radio? Number one, it's on air. So you happen to live in Kentucky. It's online. You can get it from anywhere. And even better, using a smart device like a tablet or a phone, you can get an app to enable you to listen to it through a streaming service. Because there's plenty of those. And you can just listen to it wherever you are. In fact, it works through my, Google Play. Or is it Apple CarPlay and Google? Whatever it is. Whatever the things are, it works. I'm an Android guy, so don't ask me too many questions about Apple, even though I'm in IT. I avoid it like the plague. And what's really weird, in Australia, I think the entire Apple ecosystem is only 12%. 12% of the market here. In America, I heard it was something like 68% of the market was Apple. And I think those numbers were a little skewed because in Australia it's in its entirety with computers and phones, because that's the breadth at which that Apple ecosystem exists. In the US, those numbers were purely on phones. So it excluded the PC market. And that includes businesses and homes. So it's a little skewed. But anyway, moving on. So, if you don't like technology, you can sit at home listening to a traditional radio. It looks like a radio. It's got dials, except it's a DAB, a digital audio broadcast radio, and you can listen to Revolution Radio through there, which is grand. You don't have to keep up with all the things, and you don't have to. You can just get a digital radio and get a Grace digital radio. Better still, a Grace tabletop digital radio. And you can listen, it's fantastic. If you missed Solaris' show like I did, I don't know where she was. I thought I had the problem, which is funny, and if you know me, that's actually pretty funny. But I listened to Studio A, and she wasn't there. So I've messaged her on our platform, and I can't see her anywhere, so maybe she just had a day off. We all deserve a day off, to be honest with you. I hope she's okay. No ill going her way from me. And I do hope you're safe and sound, and that everything's fine. Maybe you're just prepping the hell out of it, because of, was it the 8th of April eclipse? Probably best. Yeah. Anyway, normally I would say if you missed her show or anyone's shows, you can just jump in the archives. They're free at the station. Revolution.radio is the website name. Don't worry, you're allowed to have .radio at the end. It doesn't have to have a .com or .co.uk or whatever it is. They're just names that your country has registered, and that's it. So you can just you can have any name at the end now. You can actually buy them. They're all listed there, and it's actually pretty cool. So revolution.radio. I think I've said it more than 3 times. Now, wow. I'm still broadcasting the last broadcast out of Bundjalung country that I'll be making. I drive home tomorrow, 800 kilometres. It takes around about 7.5 hours, but I'm going to stop a couple of times and enjoy the local pies from the local pie shop at the local town on the way home. And as is my wont, when I was young and in my 20s, I would survive any drive anywhere with a chocolate paddle pop, which is an ice cream on a stick. And the chocolate flavour, there was many flavours. There was strawberry, banana, chocolate and vanilla, and a rainbow one. And chocolate was my first go-to. I would buy that if they had any. If they didn't have any of those, I wouldn't do the strawberry. I'd probably go to the rainbow one. And then if they didn't have any of that, I'd be extremely reluctant to have the banana one, because it's chemical banana, it's not actual banana or anything. And then the strawberry was last. I'd still enjoy them, but my favourite is the chocolate paddle pop by far. I found a litre container of just the chocolate paddle pop ice cream itself. That was selling it kind of really aerated and whipped, but it was quite nice. I ate the whole thing to myself. Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I could do when I was in my 20s. I could drive all day, stopping as many times as I needed to at a service station, because there weren't freeways. There were no freeways in the olden days. And so you'd pull into some town at the service station. We call it you call it the gas station. We call it the service station because that's where you used to get your car serviced. There was always a mechanic on hand, and you could buy those, quarts of oil. Do you remember that? In glass? Wow. And you'd fill it up. They had a black plastic tapered to a angled slice through what would have been a cone shaped on top of the glass jar. And used to pour that in. My first car was quite hungry for oil. It didn't require a bunch of servicing. It was pretty good and kept well, but geez, it would use oil. In those days, your car's PCV valve, which took any overpressure inside your crankcase, would vent into your carburetor, or just below your carburetor. Or it could go into the air box past the filter. So past your air cleaner, if you want to call it that. And so that used to dirty up everything, because it was all just oil ick. But anyway, moving on. So these days, because there's freeways everywhere, and I hope we all remember why they were built. That was to move military hardware around in your country on perfectly made roads for them that weren't too narrow. That's why they're all really, really wide. Ask the Germans how they came up with that. Anyway, so now you barely see any towns, and the last town between Sydney and Brisbane that is not covered by freeway at the moment, you have to drive through the town. It's the last one, and I say that's the last one. There is another one that you have to slow down to, I think 80 to drive through, but it's only a very short stretch. For some reason, they never built a freeway around it. The biggest town is Coffs Harbour, and they're finally starting to build the bypass around. But for all the other towns, You don't see them anymore. You know where you are because of the signposting, but other than that, it's pretty much an unchanging scenery, except for a mountain here and there, or you might see, a change from being sugarcane to a forest to, fields with cows in them, or some kind of plant or something that they're growing, as an agricultural thing, not just, bovine experience. And then you'll go through what, is just an endless forest for, 500 kilometers. Sometimes plantation forest, but mostly it's eucalypt forest. Oh, that we gave the US, that's right. Yeah, good luck with that. Gee, they burn really well. The oils in the leaves, they're flammable, and so when they burn with an accelerant, which I don't think anyone ever told you. Yeah, sorry for that. Well, you guys gave us cane toads to fix the cane beetle problem, but the cane beetle lived on the top of the sugar cane, and the cane toads don't climb. So now then we had two problems. We had the cane beetle and then the cane toads. And okay, that's great. Yeah, thanks for that. Whoever thought that up. Anyway, so I'm broadcasting out of Bundjalung country, and this is the last of my broadcast from here. Drive home tomorrow. Hopefully it's good weather. I don't know if any of the floods or the rain bomb or whatever you want to call it, I think they call it a black low or something like that. I think they're making names up now just to call something so they can forget about it. But it wasn't an East Coast low. It was formed over land, and now it's over water and just heading south and taking the rain with it. It was, the low developed on a trough line, which is where they do that, but it's an upper low. It's not a ground surface low, if that makes any sense. So it's been quite a wet time. I was supposed to drive back yesterday, back home, see the family. 4 months. 4 months. If you listen to this and you can remember when I started saying Bundjalung country rather than Darkinjung, because Darkinjung is where I'm from the Central Coast. Lovely place. But this is kind of like maybe where I live. It's kind of like Darkinjung by the sea. It's rather nice, and I've kept up with the car scene, because I'm a car person. A lot of people are all different kinds of things, and that's one of the things that I am. And I don't know if I've really said it on air at all, but I've been up here looking after my father because he took ill and was admitted to hospital, and when he was brought out of hospital, there was no one to look after him. So I came up, and I've been doing that for 4 months, and now I've got everything organised around him being at home, which is fantastic. Still a whole bunch of services that need to be activated, but there's long processes when you're dealing with the government. And the agencies that are currently caring for him, because he was a veteran, are there because of a certain part of a government agency, and we're hoping the rest come on board to finalise all that. So, it's slow going. It's not fast going, but it's slow going. And I haven't mentioned it on air before, but I'm not looking for pity. This is all good. Since I've been here, I lost my job because they said I can't work from home. So, yeah. Well, I was working from home, but there wasn't enough. And to be honest, I just wasn't able to go into the client site at least once or twice a week. I couldn't do that from up here. The commute would kill me. Every other day I'd be asleep. So it's just not going to happen from up here. But anyway, look, when I get back home again, I'll start looking for a job, and hopefully I can find something that is good for me, instead of just working for the dollars. Family is really supportive. I think that's really what we have to do, and remembering that not only that, not just you and your family together. if you don't have a family, I completely understand, 100% understand. And so I think we have to start with the family, turn that into community, and build a community, a strong community. Start with your neighbour. Do say hello and be kind, hoping they're also open to the idea of being kind and friendly. And once you've been able to establish a small group, you can start to expand that a little further. And you don't have to go in a stand up at town hall and say, we're looking to build a community. Nothing at all. No, just start with something, and don't be anonymous. I think that's what breaks down community, is people withdrawing from the community and not wanting to be part of it. But pointing that out is not the solution. That isn't where you should go with it, because that's going to make it fail anyway. Right. Right. So I'm going to say that I acknowledge the traditional custodians of land from where I'm broadcasting, and pay our respect to elders past, present and future, because you know what? We can learn a whole bunch about living without electricity. How do you live? How do you live where you're living right now if electricity disappeared tomorrow? This is not related to anything that's currently going on or might happen, but it's a hypothetical scenario where you might ask yourself, like I do probably on a monthly basis, stare into the pantry. At home I have a couple of cupboards that are pantry cupboards, but if you stare into the fridge, open the fridge, the door, and have a look inside and ask yourself, what are you going to miss the most about what's in the fridge? I reckon the cold from the fridge is the first go. But here, there's a bunch of things. You know, if you know anything about Australia, we have Vegemite, which is fantastic. It's actually a yeast byproduct from the production of beer, and it looks like black tar, and you have to eat it extremely sparingly, especially if you've had no contact with it at all. Best to do it. So let's say you buttered a piece of toast, and the toast is melting. Sorry, the toast is melting. The butter is melting, and you scoop up onto a knife blade, usually a butter knife, and you put some on. If it's your first tasting, it's going to be extremely salty, and if you've put too much on, you can see it. So kind of introduce it via correspondence to the toast. But once you've gotten used to it, you really seek it out. It's not a bad thing. It's kind of like chicken salt. If you've ever heard of chicken salt, I'm sure if you typed chicken salt, and the fellow that was doing Game Theory, I think it is, Game Theory, but that's just a theory. Great guy. Anyway, so he did some taste tests on this, didn't even know it existed, and chicken salt versus regular salt, and regular salt has a particular flavour to it, and everyone who has a reaction video to Australian foods who is testing, and I implore you to go out and have a look and see the difference between salt and chicken salt. Chicken salt doesn't seem to have the saltiness kick that you're really seeking when you sprinkle salt on things, like maybe hot chips, fries, if you will. You put some salt on those, and it really makes eating the chips a lot better than if you eat the chips without any salt at all, or fries. You eat the fries without any salt. It's pretty hard going to consume them all. So what do? Well, if you go without salt a little bit, and then put some chicken salt on instead, which I'm sure you can buy it or you can order it, or there's an Australian product store near you. Just try it, and immediately you go, "Where's the salt? I don't taste the salt." After a couple of, just do it once a day. After a couple of days, you just go, "Yeah, I see that now." We have an ad that was running on television where a person went into a hot fish and chips place where when you order, say, I'll have fish and chips, please, and they have battered fish fillets and they place them into the hot oil and they boil and cook, and they do the same, chips in the fish in the chips basket, and they serve it up, and right before they put anything on it, they say, would you like salt or chicken salt? And this guy says, both. And then they all do a little celebration dance as the person has sprinkled both on at the same time. Like no one's ever asked for that before. It's a very funny ad. You might even find it on YouTube. YouTube's got so much stuff on it that I've even found old black and white movies that I like, old sci-fi. Some of them are originally Russian made and then have been dubbed. They're odd, and how we all thought back then, even before we'd gone into space, that everything would kind of look like a submarine on the inside, because that's where we were. We were kind of in that steampunk where you had a turny wheel that looked like a steering wheel with a stick sticking out of it, and you would turn that holding the stick that had bearings, right? You turn that, and that would help you turn the valve or the lock to a door or what have you, right? And every piece of metal was like aero metal, so it would be triangular cut and it'd be successively smaller holes drilled through it or cut through it to lighten the mass of the overall structure. But when you hear them clanging on it, it's either steel that they just have present, or that's being what's the name for a person who does sound effects in movies? Well, they're working off screen clanging bits of metal, because who knows, it probably wasn't really metal for a film set. It's probably a bit of wood, plywood or whatever. Anyway, so ask yourself what you'd miss. And I mentioned Vegemite there for a particular reason, because it isn't something you can immediately make at home. How they make it, I don't know. It's very salty, so I'm going to have to start with some salt and some yeast byproduct, that like fermented yeast, like that foamy stuff you might scoop off the top of the beer, or as in what you're going to tip down the drain when you're done through the fermentation process, right? Whatever that is. I don't know what they do to it to process it into something you can eat, but they do. That's one. I'm going to miss cornflakes, I think, but there's a dude who had a TV show where he decided he was going to make all the things that he had for breakfast. First was he had instant coffee, so he would make coffee, dehydrate it a lot, and then spray it into a smooth ceramic sided tin or a stainless steel tin or whatever it was, where he had like a furnace, and it was heated and it would evaporate and just leave this residue that would eventually build up, and he would scrape that off, and that was his instant coffee that he was making that way. That's really how it's made. But it's not done that way. They use highly specific machinery that's more effective and efficient to run, blah, blah, blah. So he did that, and, eggs and bacon. So, he bought chickens, and then he cured bacon at home to be able to eat it for breakfast. And all the effort just for breakfast, for all these things that he had to do, was something else. And the butter, he had to get cows and then churn the milk into butter, or curds and whey, if you will. And he made cheese as well. So he did all these things. There isn't a process in which you can make this Vegemite. It's kind of complicated, and maybe a little bit like margarine. It's only one atom of aluminium or something. It's just awful. So, and if you're smart, then butter, because that's probably the first thing that you'll be doing. If we lost electricity, just queue up. I'm sure there'll be a queue at the local Amish town centre, and they'll be interviewing for people to join them, because that's what you'd want to do that. They're the only people that are going to really truly survive, right? So think about it. Open up the pantry, in your house or wherever you stored food, I don't care if it's in a garage, whatever you do, have a look at it and say, what am I going to miss the most? I think for me, it would definitely be the Vegemite. Everything else, I can just remember that it existed, and at some point, I know we'll never get there in my lifetime. We never recover enough in our lifetime to better make anything again. But just remember it kind of existed. And if you can document it, document it. So if you can remember any part of the process, document it. Write, there's gaps, don't understand. There's something we don't know about it, but yeah, someone will discover it. Like electricity. How do you make that? Well, you move a copper wire through a magnetic field. Hey, look at that. You can also use potatoes or lemons and two metals, and you can do electrolysis because it's enough induced power through the bimetals, two different metals, to be able to induce this very, very small current. But if you have a lot of them, you can make either a lot of voltage or you can make a lot of current. So parallel increases the current, and in series increases the voltage. Doesn't increase the current though. So you have to have a combination of all of those two things, and you can actually get some really, I mean, it takes a lot of material, but you can do some really cool things like, you know, like electrolysis maybe. But I wonder. That's what I do. I wonder. And it's just a simple premise. Someone will raise a simple premise with me, or I'll see an idea, or someone will say something on some YouTube video that I'm watching, or, you know, or I'm at a car meet, for instance. And today I was talking to a guy, lovely fellow, told me his background, and he's making his life work. Probably the first time he's been holding the wheel, where he's now using best judgment to control where he's going in his own life. So he's present in his own life, and before that he was, unfortunately, you know, not on the good side of society. I'm not saying he was awful, this was his own confession, but it was probably something to do with drug use, I would imagine. But that's okay, I'm not judging, He said that that's where he had a lot of difficulty in controlling what he was doing. So I thought, wow, okay, so what are you doing now? You know, and I'm turning my life around, I'm going to do this. I said, because we were at a coffee shop and he was in a queue buying himself a coffee. And he wants to educate kids and show them that he's been to the depths of his life and wants to allow others to make informed decisions. And I didn't comment at all on his choice because I think it's commendable. Well done you. But one thing that he said, and this is that same thing that people make a comment at some point during my day, and I cannot help them. I kind of feel a little like Sheldon in offering advice, but I stayed away from his lifestyle. But he said, 3 sugars, yeah, I've got to have 3 sugars to take the bitterness out of the coffee, because if I don't do that, I tend to get the runs. And I said, well, you're getting the runs because of the bitterness. That's what's happening. And he goes, what? And I go, well, yeah, see, when you eat something extremely bitter, then your intestines produce liquid. And that's only helping you. It's helping you poop. And that's the end of that. I said, by putting the sugar in, you're balancing that out. And he goes, yeah, it doesn't have the same effect anymore. He goes, if I don't do that, wow, I might have to run to the toilet. I said, yeah, I've got a mate that says that too. He actually thought that first he was getting poisoned or something, and someone put a laxative in his coffee. And I had to tell my friend of, 10 years more, 17 years, I said, you know, it's only the bitterness. And he's like, what do you mean? And I told him, and he's, oh, really? So he experimented with it, and now he uses it as a tool to help him. Oh, that's great. So that's that's the extent, at least, to which I feel like Sheldon. Sheldon from Big Bang Theory was I think just compels to tell everyone the complete truth, regardless of his inability to detect people's emotions to it. That's probably the best way of putting it. But that's kind of true with a lot of people on spectrum. So I appreciate that, and I've got a love for that. Got a lot of love for someone who is trying to help others, and whether or not it's taken the right way or not, that's up to the other person. So, building a community. What can you do with a community? Well, you can work together to solve problems, and your outcomes can benefit everybody within that community. That's really what you've got to do. Now, the reason why I say that was Nighthawk's prime goal. It was his prime directive, was to encourage people to create community within their surroundings. Do talk to the neighbours. Do understand what they do, who they are, and what they can achieve. So if they're, for an example, if they're old and frail, they're not going to be that much help, but they could be babysitters. You know what I mean? So if you have a community babysitting thing, because it takes a community to educate and to lift up. So that's the whole premise here. All the people who are probably skilled and physically able to be able to produce food or hunt or whatever it takes, they're the people you need. You need those people, and you need people with knowledge, because I'm not going to lie, a generation off a farm can't remember anything. One generation separated. I was young when my dad had a farm, and I left when I was young, and I just don't know what to plant when. When do you do it? I don't know. So I'm in that same boat. I wasn't one generation away, but my uncle had a farm and used to go there and occasionally summer holidays. My family would visit, we'd stay there for days, and I'd help out with all the chores, because that's what you do. The more people working on a farm, the better it is. So I would do that, and it was a lot of fun. I loved it. It gave me an eye into, or a window into the life of someone there's a primary producer. Wow, yeah, it's quite smelly from doing it for the first time. The second time, I kind of looked forward to smelling those smells, and I could tell you what animal it was if I was blindfolded, what their feces smell like, because that's what you've got to scoop out or clean, or put new bedding down, or whatever it happened to be. And anyone who's worked on a farm knows exactly what I'm talking about. And those gum boots, you get used to those, or the boots to stop yourself from treading in all of the ick or the muck. If you know how to use a pitchfork, great. If you can chop wood, great. If you're able to ride a horse, or help or assist herding cattle, just working a gate. What about the sheep dip to stop the parasites on the butt? Or you can trim their butt, or get rid of all of the burrs out of the fur or out of the wool. All those things are tremendous. Each one of those serves a purpose. Remember that they exist, and remember that there's something you would have to do if you were in that situation, if you're having to work as a community. You might be good, you might have a green thumb, you might know what to plant when, or how they're supposed to be planted, whether it's a raised bed or on the ground, how much water they like, what kind of loam do they like to be in, what about companion planting to reduce pests. Each one of those things are extremely important. You might just be a really strong person who's able to carry things or assist where that burden is too much for most people. Yeah, if you're brewing ethanol right now, vodka. If you're making vodka at home, then you're making ethanol, and if you're able to run your car on it, then you've got a car. you've got a fuel for a car. And if your car's already tuned for E85, that's really pretty much what it is, or just pure ethanol, good for you. Because that's only E85. I'm not going to preach, but E85 is only 15% net new carbon. I was having an argument with someone the other day. You want to put out your backyard fire, or don't have a bonfire, or if you go camping, use gas. That's net new carbon, buddy. If you collect up the sticks and burn them, that's recyclable carbon. That's what that is. That's not fossil fuel carbon, and no one makes the distinction. I'm getting a bit preachy. So, the difference when someone's talking about carbon use or emissions, and it's not just carbon, by the way, there's a whole bunch of chemicals that are net new or cumulative chemicals in the environment that we have to really kind of avoid. I believe we need to avoid them. Just take into consideration what it means to avoid them, and what do we lose. So plastic would disappear if we stopped oil. If we just banned oil entirely, then there's no more plastic. That's as simple as that. There's never again. Okay, great. Hey, we can go back to Bakelite. I kind of like that. That was good. A bit brittle, kind of like fiberglass, but hey, it's all good. You just baked it in an oven, see? That's why it was called Bakelite. So, April 8th. I did want to bring it up. The old eclipse, eh? Wow. I mean, it's been a number of years, hasn't it? 30 years since the last good one swept over the US. Well, I mentioned it during this week's Plato's Cave that there were a number of things that people were talking about on the internet. Because remember, the internet is all about personal opinion, whether you want it or not. There it is. And sometimes not all of the things are true. I know that this week I saw a snake. There was a snake in the front yard, all curled up, happy, sunning itself where the sun was available. And it was curled up into smaller than a football. Like if you cross-sectioned a football across its length, it was smaller than that, and it was probably five rings, right? So it was probably curled up 3 times or 2.5 times or something. So there was 5 lines. It was kind of a greeny tan colour, and I said, "Look, is this an eastern, brown snake, or is it a green tree snake? I don't know." Now, most everybody said brown, because that'll kill you. That absolutely kill you. Doesn't matter how big the snake is. Can be a baby and bite you, and you're dead. Green tree snake, not venomous. It'll bite. It might bite you, but it's not gonna kill you at all. And don't forget, in Australia we only have 2 types of creature. We have venomous, and then there's everything else. It might still require a hospitalization and antivenom, but it won't kill you. That's probably the best way to put it. Those 2 groups. So if someone says, "Oh, that's a venomous snake," you stay away from it. If they go, "Oh, that's not venomous," it doesn't mean you can go and play with it. It's just best not, right? Just treat everything as venomous. So the wonderful use of the internet was something I was trying to prove. So the majority said brown snake, and then there was another group, because I gave them, number 1, green tree snake, number 2, eastern brown. A lot of people said number 2, and then the lesser of them, say 60%, 30%, and 10%. Let's put it like that: 60, 30, 10. And if you're not good at math, that's 100%. So 60% said brown, 30 said tree, snake, and 10% said, well, it kind of looks like a whip snake, like the yellow-faced green whip snake or something like that, which was I think that's the closest answer. And it's still venomous, but it won't kill you. And there's the reason why I gave the example. Because it's, well, it's not harmless. We've only got venomous and the rest. So I thought that was pretty funny. Anyway, I'm going to ask the internet, I thought. And, of course, most were wrong. So in regards to April 8th, what do we know is fact? There's an eclipse. Great. When is it? Well, it's my tomorrow, but it's your day after tomorrow. Because I'm already in the 7th. Oh, I know, I'm wrong. So it's beginning the 7th now, so it is your tomorrow, the 8th. Great. So what else do we know that's a fact? Well, Oklahoma said they're deploying National Guard. Great. What else is there? Some states are saying don't send your kids to school. Okay. Some states are saying you should stock up now. Stock up. Get all the necessities. Fill your car up with fuel. Buy everything you need. Like there's a kind of, don't be a total prepper, but, make sure you've got, milk and your cereals and, all the stuff that you need before. Well, just before. Just do that. Okay, that's good. Right, probably don't travel too far. Okay. So you've got your car full of fuel. The National Guard's deployed. Your kids aren't going to school. So then you've got to take the day off because you can't just let your kids be at home by themselves, right? They'll call child services. And they're asking you to prepare like it's either a holiday weekend or there's a hurricane coming. Do you know what I mean? That's how desperate a message that is. Stock up on everything so you don't have to go to the shops. Now, they are true statements. What's left out from those statements is, because lots of people are coming to your town. And because there's more people and these shops are only there to serve the local community, they might buy out all of the stock of everything in the stores because of the great amount of people travelling from interstate and from overseas for that matter, because it's such a great celestial event to watch. That's the message that is being obfuscated when people are talking about the severity of this. Well, what does it all mean, Dave? They ask. I don't use that expressive nature I play with that. For effect only, comedy effect only. And I said, well, I'll look it up and I'll let you know. And it seems as though there's an excuse put to every one of those things, which is just your town's going to be overrun with visitors, so just do that. And we can't guarantee you're going to be able to drive around at school pickup time. So that's why don't send your kids to school. That makes sense. National Guard, they want the police to continue policing. They want the National Guard to control the crowds. Well, doesn't it sound a little better now when you add that phrase to it? And that phrase was added in some cases. But some news stories took that to the extreme as a bit of fear porn. I hope nothing happens. I hope it's not an opportunity for directed energy weapons or, suddenly, well, since they'll be blacked out, why don't we do an EMP? Yeah. If you're America's enemy, or actually one of the list of enemies, sure. It could be with all of that mayhem going on, Iran could attack Israel, even though Iran and Israel neither are going to see the eclipse. Doesn't matter. What about China taking Taiwan? That could be a thing. After that earthquake, that's something. I saw what China did was they put out a message about their own town, Taipei. Yeah, well, there was an earthquake in our Taipei, and with rescue efforts continue, even though they're not doing any of the rescuing. That's fine. They can do that. So I hope that makes you feel a bit better. Now I'm going to twist it. Okay, what if that extra bit was just there to make people feel calm about doing it? There's a point. So maybe you really should do all those things. Take it seriously. Maybe buy a little extra while you can. I heard a story that America was going to, I don't know where in America, so just America as a whole, was going to launch some space probes or something. I don't know what it was as well. So, if you see rockets flying up into the air, could be missiles, rockets, I don't know, they look very similar. So if they were going to do that, then you wouldn't pay any attention to a first strike or a retaliatory strike or anything else that you might see. I postulate this. Would it not be a tremendous time to do the fake alien invasion? Because suddenly during the eclipse, the only time that you've got the sun completely blacked out, maybe it reveals a whole bunch of huge starships that we weren't able to see for some reason. I don't know. And they begin the fake alien invasion. That'd be awesome. I love that. At least there'd be some news, except for how bad the economy is in all of our countries. Every single last one of our countries has cost of living issues. And I do totally believe it's a concerted effort by the parasites to reduce our capabilities, to build the moat, widen the moat, make it deeper, wider, impenetrable or uncrossable, if you will. And that's the idea behind it. Is anyone seeing any media on the European farmer protests? No? Because that's something that's happening here. We don't have farmer protests. We're not seeing the thing that's happening here is we're not seeing these protests. The protests are online. You can find them through news sites. You find videos of them. Farmers in tractors blocking freeways and going to the cities and dumping manure and spraying ick water, water that maybe, I don't know, they pumped out of sewers. I don't know. Whatever it is that they're spraying to try and force their way into a town because no one wants to be covered in this ick. It's repulsive, probably, give you diseases, whatever. And that is the greatest concern, that these messages on a whole aren't being advertised within our countries. Also, all of this stuff, all this hoo-ha is silencing the recent vaccine queries that other governments around the world are employing within their own jurisdictions. There's no collective one or global one. It's just, I know in Britain they had one. In Australia, there was very limited what they could ask as questions, but it was there, and sure enough, it's there. There are a few things that no one's talking about in the mainstream media, and that is excess deaths. No one's talking about that. No one talks about it. There are what could very well be, if the technology existed, and I'm not saying I believe any of it, but I'm saying if the technology existed where you could manually manipulate weather, then wouldn't you? And would you do it to benefit yourself? Sure, why not? If you're a country and you can, sure, that's great, let's do that. If you're a scientific advisor comes to you and says, sir, the weather manipulation tests have been confirmed, we can do it. All right, so what can we do? Oh, we can make it rain or we can make it stop raining. We can divert things like hurricanes. Yeah, that's okay, that's all good. So what do you think we should do first, sir? Well, probably let's make it rain where it didn't rain. Let's try that. Like pick a place that never rains and let's make it rain there. Okay. And come back here to that was successful, so we've flooded Death Valley. Okay, and that just happened in the last year. And okay, so right, so what else can we do? Well, how far can we do this outside of the jurisdiction of our own country? Anywhere on the planet, sir. Okay, so who's our enemy that we'd like to affect first, sir? All right, let's try this country. Because have you noticed that all of the crazy weather is now happening across the globe, where rain is like totals you've never ever heard before? Like never. Like we had a place that had 2 yards of rain. Just saying it for the American audience, right? Crazy. When does that happen? Isn't it like 36 inches a yard? So they had 60, what is it, 36 and 30, 72 inches of rain. That's nuts. That doesn't happen. And that's, more than an annual's rainfall totals in a couple of days. So just think about it. Think about what you could do if you had a weapon of that, well, let's say an instrument of that design. And what would you do with it? And who would you affect? I'd like to prove, if it were me, I'd prove that it worked within my own jurisdiction and then to benefit ourselves. But if you're stealing moisture from somewhere, it's not going somewhere else. It's a closed system. And unless you're generating moisture by heating the ocean surface, which is still probably a thing you can do, then that's okay. But if you're diverting something, then it should have gone somewhere else, let's just say. So you might be causing a drought if you're making it rain somewhere. And this isn't like a butterfly's wings beat in whereas the Amazon and there's a hurricane somewhere out. No, that's ridiculous. There isn't a way of amplifying a butterfly's wings effort on the air, which would propagate probably only a meter away from it at best. If you looked at the air currents, that could never influence anything 1,000 miles away. It's preposterous. It made people think as an idea, but the whole idea of it is completely stupid. Honest. But everyone talked about it just like it was the boiling a frog. Yeah, the frog just dies. No, it doesn't. If you put a frog in water and slowly turn the temp up, it'll jump out. The reason why that experiment by the German scientist ended up with frog's legs, like as a meal, because he cooked the frog, was because the scientist was testing whether the frog's soul would save its body by taking out its brain. So a dead frog was in a pot of water that he then boiled, and the frog didn't jump out. Truth. Look it up. It's there, and correct the next stupid person who repeats those words, because that does my head in. They repeat something without any knowledge at all of what it actually meant, believing wholeheartedly that inherited opinion from somebody else. And isn't that what our news does to us? Isn't that what we confronted when all of our governments turned fascist all of a sudden? Anyway, guess what? This is the end of the first hour. I love how dark I got that at the end. But anyway, it's appreciated. This is only going to be a very short break, and after which I might talk about the Kozrev mirrors, time travel, and remote viewing, part 8. But in the meantime, take the time to donate, maybe go to the toilet. That's what we're going to do. Alright, catch you after the short break.